Hello YouTube, got another Axis and Allies 1914 video for you. Today we're going to be exploring one particular rule that I think could use some serious revising in this game, and that is the rule surrounding unrestricted submarine warfare. If you've read the rules on unrestricted submarine warfare, they are pitifully weak. I don't know why the German player would ever choose to initiate unrestricted submarine warfare unless the U.S. was already about to enter the war anyway, or something like that. So when I think about revising this rule, there are a couple of things that I would like to solve, or I would like to have my end result include or encompass these things. The first one is, first, it just has to make sense to do it. This is both important from a gameplay perspective as well as a historical perspective. It wasn't an option that Germany said, oh, we're definitely going to do this. That's why they waited, one of the reasons they waited so long to do it in the actual war, but it was something that they reasonably had an expectation that it would have a big impact, especially on Great Britain. And with the rules as they currently are, you have a 1 in 3 chance of taking one IPC away from Great Britain, and then the same thing for the United States when you declare it. That means that for every 3 subs you have, you're likely going to knock one IPC away from each of those countries. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You would have to have a mass of dozens of subs to think that you might bring England to its knees, like Germany thought they might actually be able to do in the real war. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Second, both historically and in this game, Germany has a lot it needs to contend with. The unrestricted submarine warfare rules first have to make sense for being able to, they have to have a reasonable possibility of crippling England severely. They have to be worth provoking the United States coming in the war. And they have to be effective enough that the German player can feel at least kind of okay devoting a decent amount of its production to its navy rather than its army. It doesn't make sense if it's going to try to build a bunch of subs and then just get overrun by France and Russia. Now, it is going to be weaker in terms of land forces, and it should be if it's going to devote resources elsewhere, but if building up the navy means that you're completely vulnerable on land, then that doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. So I've been thinking about different ways to do this, and I tend to focus more on land, so not as much on navy, but I'm going to give it a shot here. Trying to accomplish those goals that I set out, but also not make it unbalanced. So there are a couple things. The first thing is that I'm going to say that your subs, based on the current unrestricted submarine rules, they are actually always able to follow those rules and take production away from Great Britain. It should be a fairly small amount of production unless Germany is really loading up its navy. For each sub you have to roll and score a 1 or a 2, and for every 1 or 2 that you roll, you take one IPC away from England. So you're gonna hinder England, but you're not going to completely cripple them. And this actually would occur, one thing that I would do to help out England is that this would occur after England takes its turn. So when England is about to collect the money that it should collect, that's the money that gets potentially taken away by the subs. This allows England the possibility to send its surface fleet out and hunt submarines before its convoys, which aren't illustrated in the game, but convoys are, carrying supplies around, getting IPCs to London. it would have the chance to use its surface ships to protect those convoys. So the British player would only lose their sub production after their turn. And this would be active beginning on turn 1 of the game, based on however many subs Germany has. Because throughout the war, even when they did not have unrestricted warfare for subs, they were still sinking British ships. And so I think it makes sense to have some sort of minor impact to England's production with subs. Now, what about... Oh, and something else, I would probably expand the range. Right now, I believe it is sea zones 2, 7, and 8 are the only ones that count towards unrestricted submarine warfare. I would either expand that to everything north of, let's say, sea zone 2, 7, and 15, and north of that all the way to sea zone 10 over here. Reason for that is England would have been getting supplies, trading all over the place. Now, I don't know that they were doing a whole lot of major shipments through the Mediterranean. That's why eventually I'd cut it off. But certainly anywhere along the French coast, anywhere, up by Norway, over by Canada, anywhere around there, I think is fair game. Or I think reasonably could be considered fair game. Now, what about unrestricted submarine warfare? So this is just your standard warfare. Well, when you declare that, German subs no longer need to be as careful, which means they can do more damage, and they also don't have to be as cautious with their targeting, and they have the potential to do more damage because they're not trying to hold back. They're not, being extra cautious in terms of, we don't want to cause residual damage. Whatever the case may be, I think it makes sense that they both would be less cautious with their targeting, and they'd be trying to cause maximum damage. So I'm going to say that when this is declared, instead of only hitting on a 1 or a 2, they're going to hit on a 1, 2, or 3. So their chance of hitting is slightly greater. And I'm going to say that on every hit, they actually cause the target to lose 2 production, which dramatically increases the potency of this. And the fact that it is both on England and on the United States, I'm almost wondering if that makes it overpowered. But I'd like to get some of your feedback on that, because ultimately, whatever the rule is, it should, at least with a handful of subs, England, with a handful of subs, Germany should be able to knock England down by about a third of its production. I think that's fair. It's reasonable to say that is, sufficiently crippling their economy without knocking England totally out of the war. It is a big enough of an impact, especially when it's both countries, that it makes sense that Germany might devote some of its production to building subs. Because these things happen after unrestricted, it'd be after England's turn, and then for the attacks on the U.S. production after the U.S.'s turn. Both of those countries get around to hunt subs first. If they choose to completely ignore the subs, of course, it's going to be more damage. But they do have the potential to knock out a couple German subs before Germany gets its chance to knock out their production. So those are some of my thoughts on that, about how we might make first subs more useful, a little more historically accurate, so Germany can take out British production even before unrestricted submarine warfare, and then how it might make sense to declare that even though it instantly brings the U.S. in the war, and how it could significantly impact England. So let me know what you think. Is this overpowered? Is this underpowered? Is this about right? How would you tweak either this rule, or what would you do with the existing rule to tweak it so that it's a proper balance? Look forward to hearing from you guys.